Hey everyone, welcome to My Wife the Dietitian, a weekly podcast about lifestyle and healthy eating. I'm Rob, and together with my wife Sandra, we invite you to join us on this informative yet entertaining journey through the complex world of healthy eating.
We'll cover everything but the kitchen sink. Each week we'll discuss topics ranging from how to protect yourself from developing cancer, spicy foods to rev up the libido, to caring for your palliative grandfather with Alzheimer's.
We'll also delve into more complex issues like, what the heck is oat milk? Why doesn't my butt fit into these jeans? And every guy's favorite question, will eating spinach really make it bigger? Join us each week as we strive to educate, enlighten, and entertain you.
Do you ever feel out of control around sweet foods? Are your sugar cravings driving you to eat foods when you know you're not hungry? Our human brain is wired for sugar, and it brings us feelings of calm and comfort. There's no wonder we crave sweets, especially when tired or down. If you experience sugar cravings regularly or feel out of control around sweets, take a closer look at your diet and lifestyle. There may be things that are missing in your diet or ways to improve lifestyle habits that can curb your sugar cravings. Join us today for how to curb cravings when you feel addicted to sweets.
Hey everyone, welcome back to My Wife the Dietitian. We're here with my wife, Sandra.
Hi, Rob.
Hello, Sandra. How's it going?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. We are on episode 25. Holy smokes.
Yeah. How to curb cravings when you feel addicted to sweets.
I think that's something that everyone can
Relate to?
relate. That's the word I was looking for. Relate to.
Right.
Yeah. I think at one point in time, I think everyone's been there. So.
Well, we're born drinking breast milk, and it's the sweetest thing in the world.
And is that where the addiction starts, do you think?
It's not necessarily addiction, but it is, our brains are wired for sweet. It identifies that there's calories and energy, and it's a human desire and need, and it fuels the dopamine reward center in the brain.
Yeah, I knew there was some kind of chemistry involved. So that'll be interesting to find out what's going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk about 10 tips, 5 things to start doing to help curb your cravings, and 5 things to
stop doing.
Or, limit or reducing
Awesome. Okay. Well, let's get started.
Yeah. So, and we talked a little bit about the why, like that our brains are wired for sweet, but it could be a psychological reason or physiological. So the physiological is that like dopamine reward center
like the chemistry part of it.
Exactly. Like it's like we need it for that craving, that addiction or quasi addiction. The conditioning. So psychologically, we can get conditioned into doing things over and over again that is reinforcing the habit. So it's like behavior patterns and habits we do because of just various experiences in our life.
Yeah, both good and bad. Usually if you do something and it feels good, you're going to want to do it again. And vice versa. If you do something and it doesn't feel good, then you're probably not going to do it again. So if you have a good experience with something sweet, like, I don't know, like we often eat ice cream when we're watching a movie. That's become kind of a pattern for us.
And it might have stemmed from, you hurt yourself. Oh, let's go have an ice cream cone and make it feel better.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's all sorts of things.
It's a comfort feeling, right? And and you don't even think about that when you're eating ice cream. You just know that it's associated with comfort.
Yeah. And we don't eat ice cream every night, every other night maybe. No, we're joking.
I don't necessarily eat it at night, but I do love ice cream. Also, think of maybe coming home from school and having home-baked cookies. So you associate cookies with comfort and, after a stressful day and coming in and having, mom give you something sweet and chewy, chocolatey. It's kind of that association again.
For sure.
So that's a lot of reason why we have become kind of accustomed to craving sweets and wanting those sweet foods and sugary foods.
Right. And I think you and I were talking about this. There's other cravings that we have too. I mean, people crave salty foods and they crave like fatty kind of, is that what it's called? Fatty foods like chips and things that are high in fat. Like you have cravings for those too, but we're just going to focus on the sweet stuff today.
Yeah, the sugary and sweet.
Yeah. Okay. So should we start with like the things we should be doing more of?
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Okay. So we'll go through those and then we'll talk about the things to stop doing.
Okay, that
All
sounds
right,
good.
then.
So, how to curb cravings when you feel addicted to sweets? Well, one good rule of thumb is to not skip meals and to try to eat fairly regularly. So, that could mean every 4 or 5 hours, like making sure that you are not going long periods without eating, because that kind of creates this vicious cycle of like the roller coaster of blood sugar and just feeling like that hangry feeling. So that's number one, is just make sure that you eat regularly.
Yeah. Keep everything balanced, because when you eat, you're getting like your nutrients are giving you sort of fuel for your body that balances things out. And if you miss the meal or you're late on eating, things are going to start getting out of whack, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's what actually happens when people are on kind of really strict diets or extreme diets, because they might just, and then there's like, it can get into a situation where it's almost like disordered eating, because, it's so extreme and you're not eating regularly, and then the cravings, and you get into the kind of the binge cycle. So there's a lot to that, and to kind of help prevent that big roller coaster of like situation and feeling, eat regularly is really important.
Through the day, not like 24 hours a day, but through your eating period between whatever mid-morning and evening when you're eating.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, and I'm in a future episode, we will talk about intermittent fasting. So,
yeah, that's where I was going with that.
Oh, okay. So yeah, no, we're just talking about like, regular through the day eating. And craving is different than hunger. So if you have craving and hunger together, that's a powerful drive.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's like that hangry, like you're, over hungry, and you don't want to have that over hungry feeling, because then that's when you make rash decisions and you like open the bag of chips and you
eat the whole thing.
Oh yeah, you overeat and you just want something instantly. And it comes from this, historically, you think like generations and
like thousands of years ago.
Yeah. We you think as humans, prehistoric, a long time ago, we were so hunters and gatherers, and to get food, especially animal food, it was a real chore. It was really hard to do. And maybe you're in a situation where, your family, your community is all like, huddled in a cave trying to keep warm, and somebody has to go out and get, hunt the beast to bring meat back to the family or to the community. And that took a lot of courage and a lot of risk to do that. So you think, how powerful is that hunger drive to push people to do those types of things to get the food? So it's, it really is an urgent feeling. So when we feel hungry, and when you feel over hungry, then you get those like powerful drive to eat now. Got to eat now.
Yeah, for sure.
The urgency.
The other thing with the prehistoric times is they never knew when their next meal was going to come. So they would just like power through all the food. Well, maybe they didn't. I don't know. Maybe they saved it, but you can only save meat for so long. I'm guessing that anyway.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, that's when I think, the storage, like drying and preserving and salting and all those types of food storage methods came into play. But you're right. I mean, they didn't know when the next big meal was coming. So it is that hunger feeling, that drive to eat is so innate, and it's been with us forever. And as I said before, our brains are wired for sweet. So we know that when we taste something sweet, our genetics is saying, oh, this is calories and energy, and it's a human drive.
Right.
Even though we don't actually need like refined sugars, which we've talked about in previous episodes, like the last one when we were talking about ultra processed foods and how so many foods are overly sweetened. They've got that, I can't remember the term, but it's like the peak, like the taste, they're like hyper palatable, or just that taste.
That sounds
point
right. Sure.
Is so perfect from the, the company making the food, and they have the labs and the the scientists to make the food taste specifically a certain way to
appeal to the masses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number two
is include protein at every meal.
Okay. Yeah. Because that fills you up. It stays with you longer.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we need protein anyways, just for a good balance in our meal. And the protein is more satiating, so it stays with you longer, and it helps to offset the blood sugar rise of eating just a carbohydrate food.
Right.
So yeah, definitely including protein at each meal is really an important strategy to help prevent the cravings, the sugary cravings.
Right. Okay.
And remember, when we're talking about protein, what does that mean?
Well, the obvious one is meat, but you've also got dairy, nuts and seeds, beans, legumes.
Oh, I like how you mostly said plant-based proteins. Awesome.
Okay, well, I'm learning, right?
Chicken and fish are really awesome. You mentioned like red meat, beef, pork, but definitely the nuts and seeds and legumes and eggs and yogurt and milk and cheese.
Like having protein doesn't mean you have to have like a steak for lunch. You could have some cottage cheese or some nuts and seeds, or peanut butter sandwich or whatever. A lot of people think protein is just meat, but yeah, there's other sources of protein. And I didn't realize that. I think maybe I'm basing this on what I used to think. Once I started reading labels, I was surprised at where I was finding protein.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, holy cow, look at all the protein in cottage cheese or in
grains, like in
grains.
Yeah, like in some of the pasta and the breads, and we're going to talk about that on a future episode about like whole grains and refined grains, and just talk about that. But yeah, there's a lot of protein in grains.
Yeah, so just check out the label and you'll be surprised where protein shows up.
Unless they eat food without labels, which is food that rots, which is minimally processed whole foods, which is excellent for you.
There you go. There's that too. All right. Number 3.
Keeping hydrated. So a lot of times we have a craving, or we think we want something like really bad, but really just thirsty. And you need to drink water. And
you should be drinking water all the time anyway, but it's one of those things we forget. It's easy to forget, but yeah, exactly. I started doing, you mentioned this to me years ago too, and it really works. If you're sort of getting a little itch for food, sometimes it's just like, this is a funny thing to say, but like your mouth needs something to do.
Okay.
Right. And it's like, it doesn't need to eat. That's why a lot of people smoke. That's why a lot of people chew gum, because it's like, I don't know, there's like their mouth needs something to do, as weird as that sounds.
That's funny. Actually, that's part of it too, is chewing gum, because that is it. Yeah. It gets your mouth to do something that isn't eating. And the same thing with brushing your teeth. Like if you brush your teeth, then, as my dad always said, I don't want to clutter up my mouth. Like when someone say brushed his teeth and then someone was offering a dessert after or something. Yeah. It's so true though. It's like, yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Like, you're done eating and you brush your teeth, and then you kind of feel like, okay, I'm done. Like I've cleaned my mouth. I don't want to add anything more.
Yeah, for sure.
That's kind of a logical way to look at it.
Yeah.
But keeping hydrated, a lot of us are mildly dehydrated. So it's really, we're going to do a whole nother episode on hydration, especially as we're coming into the heat of the summer and we need to have, more fluid. But I think a lot of people don't realize how much fluid you do need. And a lot of it should be water, because if you're not drinking enough water through the day, you're probably mildly dehydrated, and it really affects how you feel, your energy level, and how your body runs.
Yeah. The one time that I was paying attention to it, not the one time, but for a while I paid attention to it just because Sandra had talked about it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to really like just, I think I set a timer on my watch to remind me to drink every 30 minutes or something. I was drinking.
I've done that before.
Yeah. I was drinking the amount of water I was supposed to be drinking. And I was running to the bathroom to pee like every like 40 minutes, it seemed.
Really?
It's like, okay.
Wow.
But I felt good.
Oh.
But yeah, it's like, holy moly, that what a difference. Like
really?
when you're getting that amount of fluid that you're supposed to be getting, yeah, it definitely runs through you.
Yeah. Did you do that for a day, a week, a month?
I don't remember. It was years ago, but
A couple of days in?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good experiment,
I'll
actually.
do it again. I'll do it again, and then we'll do a podcast about it.
Definitely. Because you can tell, a way to tell if you're hydrated is
the color of your pee.
You got it. Yeah, I've said that many times, eh?
Yeah, and if you stink too, not like if you have like BO.
Yeah, like concentrated sweat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, all these things you learn when you live with someone who's like sciencey.
Well, it's true though. I mean, it's you got to drink more water if you're feeling like, it's a really good rule of thumb.
Yeah, so you want your pee to be like clear.
Exactly, and non-odorous.
Yeah, not stinky.
Yeah, and if you are sweating and are odorous when you're sweating, you might be lacking in enough hydration.
There we go. All right, let's talk about number 4.
Number 4. All right. Well, this sounds a bit counterintuitive, but it actually works. If you eat a bitter vegetable like radish or arugula is another one, that bitterness actually takes away that craving for sweet.
I can imagine that if you're craving like chocolate,
yeah,
the last thing you're going to want to eat is like a radish or some bitter vegetable.
I know, but try it.
That takes some discipline.
Yeah, it's a conscious decision. And that's the thing about eating too, is that consciously making the decision about what you're eating and how you're eating and when. Like, it's really interesting because if you really like look at your eating habits and your eating patterns, so many of us do it mindlessly throughout our days that taking a real close look at how we eat and when and why, it can really help identify some pitfalls, and it helps with solutions.
Awesome.
Yeah, because if you're experiencing sugar cravings regularly or feeling out of control around sweet foods, that's when you should take a closer look at your diet and lifestyle, because you might be falling short with some of these things we're going to talk about. And there might be things you can do, like little hacks that will actually help in the future to prevent those sugary cravings.
Right. Okay.
So the other bitter thing would be dark chocolate, like over 70%. So say you do have that like chocolate craving. Have you ever had like the chocolate craving and then eaten too much chocolate and then you almost feel like you don't want to eat any chocolate ever again?
Ever again, yeah.
Have you had that kind of experience?
Not with chocolate.
Really?
With other things, yes.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, because it can happen with any of the like sweets or like candy, or where you overindulge and then you...
Yeah, I've probably had it with chocolate. I just blocked it.
Yeah.
Because I like eating chocolate too, so...
Yeah, that's right. But...
Years ago, Southern Comfort. I drank too much Southern Comfort one night and was sick for days. And then years later, someone had some and I just smelled it and it made me want to vomit. It was a crazy reaction that like my brain remembered how nasty it was. And
well, that smell center and the memory is right next to each other in the brain.
Yeah.
So smells can really evoke strong reactions. Like if there was an emotional, crisis or something happened.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's
We
Yeah.
should try that again as an experiment, just because that was like 30 years ago. It'd be interesting if my brain still remembers that now.
Oh yeah, actually,
Yeah.
there's a good, well, for people having systemic therapy like chemotherapy for cancer treatment. One recommendation is to not eat their favorite foods when they're having symptoms like nausea or vomiting, because there's been so many people that have been turned off of like chocolate, for instance, or coffee, or because they're drinking it when they're having the vomiting, and then they associate it after that every time.
Interesting.
So it's like they're totally turned off their favorite foods. And, you think as a healthy person and someone who hasn't been through that, oh, that'd be a great way to reduce your cravings. But no, it's because food is like the spice of life. The food is quality.
Supposed to get enjoyment from food.
Yeah. And if we can manage those roller coasters of cravings and our reactions to different foods, then we can enjoy our food. And even the sugary foods that we crave sometimes, like indulge and savor and appreciate that food, and like have that dark chocolate, and have a piece of birthday cake, whatever. Like, you don't have to completely abstain forever. It's a matter of balance, and the 80-20 rule we talked about before.
Exactly.
So 80% of the time, if you're eating well and moving a lot, exercising, and doing all the good things for your body, like a healthy way, like living well, then 20% of the time indulge and have a beer with friends, or eat birthday cake with your family, or whatever it is. But keep it in balance and moderation.
Good advice.
Yes. So the last one on the what to do would be to include, or you can actually eat some of the sweet things like fruits and vegetables. So thinking of a date is like a really sweet fruit that's really good for us. Like, it's really actually highly sweet, but it actually has a low glycemic index. So it's one of these really awesome foods. Like 3 dates would satisfy your sweet craving probably. So having those dried fruits available for if you know that you have sweet cravings, and maybe they come every time, like every day around 3:00, or there's a certain time of the day that you have these and it's going to happen, you can prepare. You can stock the kitchen, or, have things available that you eat when those cravings hit.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah. So that's satisfying the sweet craving, but it's doing it in a healthy way.
Exactly. And it's like, you think of the naturally sweet vegetables, like sweet potato. It's actually got the word sweet in it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and then any roasted vegetables tend to be sweet, like garlic.
It brings out the sweetness, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of being prepared and having those foods available so that you have them in your arsenal of tools if you do, if the craving hits.
For sure. Oh, that's good. Good advice.
Yeah. So let's go over those 5, Rob. Number 1 was eat regularly.
Yep.
Number 2 is include protein.
Yeah. Fill you up.
3 is hydrate.
Yep.
Number 4.
Hydrate with water.
Yeah, that would be the best one, or tea.
Yeah, but not juice.
Yeah, not necessarily like sweetened beverages. Actually, definitely not sweetened beverages, because that kind of just feeds that craving.
Yeah, and no Southern Comfort.
Right. That's a whole different episode.
A whole different one. Yeah.
Number 4 is eat a bitter vegetable like arugula or radish, or something bitter like dark chocolate is quite bitter, actually.
Perfect.
Number 5 would be having a naturally sweet vegetable or fruit available, and to have that ready to eat if you do have those cravings.
Awesome.
All right. So let's talk about some things to kind of reduce in our day, and these ideas will help curb cravings when we feel addicted to sweets.
Perfect. Sounds good. Number 1.
All right. It's actually reduce your intake of overly processed foods or ultra processed foods.
And why is that?
If we're eating too many of the ultra processed foods, then we're probably throwing the balance off of eating enough of the minimally processed foods.
Okay, that makes sense.
And you remember those, a lot of those ultra processed foods are made, like they're like almost made, instead of, they're like not just growing from the earth, they're made in factories, and they have a lot of additives and preservatives and sweeteners that trick the brain.
trick the brain into what?
To making us think we need more of them.
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah.
And that I think is part of that whole thing about it causes this addiction that we need to have more of that.
I see.
And
yeah.
actually that goes into point number 2 or 7 of our 10 points. So 2, reduce the artificial sweeteners, because a lot of those actually make you want more sweets. Like they've done research to show that when we have foods or drinks that have artificial sweeteners, those actually propel you to want more sweet foods instead of the opposite.
Wow. It's like a drug.
Yeah. It's like, and they're usually way sweeter than natural sweet foods.
Huh.
So they're like, 15 times as sweet as like if you bit an apple or you have a strawberry or something that's naturally sweet.
Right.
And so, especially if kids are growing up eating candies and artificial sweetened foods and different things that are ultra processed, they actually are getting used to thinking that this is what a sweet food is, and they don't think that regular fruit is actually that sweet. And they need that, their threshold for sweet is way higher, and this is really detrimental because they grow up needing more and more of that, the sweet foods that aren't minimally whole foods.
Interesting.
So it's important for us to try to eat more minimally processed whole foods and just get used to those flavors and savor those flavors and enjoy those flavors instead of thinking, oh, we always need something more sweet.
Right.
Another thing that we might not be getting enough of if we're always having cravings for sweet is just enough fiber in our day.
Yeah, I was gonna say that with protein. It's kind of the same. It sort of does the same thing as protein. It fills you up, and it does something with sugar too, doesn't it? It has a reaction, or you can explain that.
Yeah, no, that's good. A lot of us, like there is definitely most people in North America are not getting enough fiber in their day, and they're falling short of the requirements. And definitely, we talked about this in a previous episode with soluble and insoluble fiber. And the soluble fiber actually helps with people with diabetes to help bring down the blood sugar rise.
Oh, cool.
It helps with cholesterol too, in taking some of that, the bad or the lousy, the LDL cholesterol, brings it down by taking it to the liver to be processed. Fiber is a really powerful element in our diet that we really need more of, and that you usually get that by eating more whole, minimally processed foods. So including more vegetables and fruits and whole grains and nuts and seeds and legumes.
I'm sounding like a broken record now.
Yeah, but it's true. I mean, it's like, and so many people do have these, like, feel addicted to sweets, and that's another way to help with that, is just making sure that you have fiber in all your meals and snacks too.
Right. And you can do it. It's just not as easy as cracking a bag of chips or opening a box of whatever. That's the easy route. So, yeah.
Yeah, and 80-20, right? So sometimes you can have, crack the crackers or open the bag of chips, no problem. It's just a matter of having, finding that balance.
Yeah, for sure.
So number
4, I think.
4 of the looking at your lifestyle, and you might not be getting enough sleep. So if you're, maybe working night shift, or say you aren't getting like 6 or 7 hours a night of sleep, of good restful sleep, there is a chance that during the day you're going to have these sugary cravings for sweets.
You know what I found too, and we might have discussed this in our sleep episode. I used to go to bed at later. I used to be a bit of a night owl, and I'd go to bed at 11 or 12, and I'd get up at 7:30 or 8. And then I started going to bed earlier, like 9:30 maybe, 10 o'clock, and getting up at 5:30, 6 o'clock. And it made a huge difference. I was still getting, 7 or 8 hours of sleep, but I was getting it at a different time, more according to the nocturnal clock, perhaps.
Oh, yeah.
And it made a huge difference, because you just think, I got my 8 hours of sleep. Why do I feel tired? Which I always did when I went to bed late.
Oh, your difference in your tiredness.
Yeah. I felt way more energy, a lot less tired. I was waking up in the morning at 5:30 going, okay, I'm good. I'm ready to get up.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It was really interesting. So if you are getting lots of sleep and you still feel tired, maybe that's something you can try if it fits your schedule.
Like shifting it to earlier.
Start going to bed a little bit earlier and getting up earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Because I mean, yeah, if you aren't getting the sleep that your body needs, like maybe in the time frame that it needs or the number of hours, it does, your brain wants that reward by having sweets. And so remember we said it's a dopamine hit, like it's that reward center. So that's a way to kind of keep, like you think it helps feeling alert because sweet represents calories or energy. And it's just that maybe we need to adjust our sleep hygiene and get a better night's sleep.
Yeah. The other thing too, staying up late is you're more likely to eat stuff you shouldn't be eating between like 8 and midnight.
Right. Yeah.
Versus 5:30 in the morning, you're not going to crack into something bad. You know, you're yeah.
That's true. And remember we talked about how
I'm not.
The most amount of ice cream that's eaten is usually after 8 p.m. for, North Americans.
Totally.
It's just that thing that we eat before bed, I guess. And it's not great. It's not a great time to eat it. And yeah. Okay, the last thing to help curb your cravings when you feel addicted to sweets, and we kind of already talked about this one, but I definitely want to bring it up, is identify and reduce emotional eating. So identify like why you're eating, like what's the reason that I'm eating? Like what is the reason that I'm reaching for the food?
You know, it's funny. There's so many times that I'll sit and I catch myself because I'm sort of frozen in front of the open fridge deciding what to eat. And it gives me enough time to realize that I'm not hungry. I'm just bored. Or I feel like it's time for me to eat, but I'm not hungry.
Yes.
And then sometimes you'll come in and like, what are you doing? I'm like, and you totally like call me on it.
I don't.
We do sometimes. You'll realize that I'm probably not hungry, and
I've never ever thought of that. Because I always think that you have such a good eating style and like you eat so healthy. And so I don't have, it's the kids when they open the fridge and they're just standing there. I know they're hungry. And then they say, there's nothing in the fridge. It's just ingredients.
You mean raw food?
You mean like you have to like, cut up a few carrots and grab some dip, like that kind of ingredients.
You got to make it.
Yeah. They want to open like, the whole easy way to eat.
Yeah. But I think you definitely introduced me to that idea of you're not hungry, you're just eating for a different reason.
Right. And we do have a magnet on the fridge that says, why am I eating? And it's like, you have to identify, like you almost put your hand up in front of you, like a stop, and you halt. You say halt, and it's like hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Or any of these emotions driving my eating. And that's a whole nother episode. We're going to talk about like emotional eating and cravings. But this is just the tip of the iceberg for this one, because we're ending on the identify and reduce emotional eating. Because when we comfort eat, we're usually trying to fill something in our life or in that moment with, like, we're filling that emotion with food, and really it's going to be filled in another way and not with food. And food's just, it's just
like a Band-Aid.
It's a Band-Aid, and it's actually, it's not great, because then it's a vicious cycle of like eating and then feeling really guilty and repenting and then eating more and binging, and like it's like a big cycle, a kind of a vicious cycle. So it's really important to get mindful about the reasons we're eating. And is it because we're hungry, like truly hungry, because it has been like 4 or 5 hours since we ate? Or is it there's something like I'm tired, or I'm lonely, or I'm angry? There's emotions that drive our eating. Mm-hmm. And the other reason to eat, so there's actually 3 reasons to eat. I mentioned the actually hungry, like stomach hunger.
Actual hunger.
Yeah, actually
people eat because they're hungry.
Yeah. And the second one is emotional, like heart hunger.
Yeah.
And then the third one is like the mouth hunger, where
that's what I do a lot.
the
It's
cravings.
like, I want to taste that.
Exactly.
I'm big on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I want that sweet ice cream, or I want that salty chips. Like you want the certain sense or taste, or that
You
mouth
call it
hunger.
mouth feel, don't you?
Yeah, mouth
Which is
hunger, mouth feel.
A word I've never heard before until Sandra started being in nutrition school. But and mouth feel, I'm like, oh, okay.
And there's taste fatigue. That's when people get sick of, eating the same thing over and over again. But that's a whole other topic. But yeah, just, identify and reduce your emotional eating. Try to identify, like, why are you feeling stressed, and what's going on, and why are you reaching for that food? Because if you identify the reasons behind it, maybe you can do something different, and maybe that will help reduce your cravings and reduce the behavior of reaching for food when you don't probably need to.
Perfect.
This was a fun one to talk about, because I think it's so relevant for so many people, and us included. I mean, I definitely am. I just had my tea and it was sweetened.
I can relate to a lot of these too. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. And thanks for sharing your wisdom with us once again.
Thanks, Rob.
All right. We'll talk to you all next week.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today on My Wife the Dietitian. If you like what you heard, don't be shy. Leave us a comment or review, and be sure to share our podcast with your friends. If you'd like to hear more, hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media pages for updates, episode trailers, and other odds and ends. For more info and links on what we discussed on today's episode, check the show notes. We'll be back next week with another informative and fun-filled episode.